Ben, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, likewise. So we've never really done like an official project management episode. We've danced around it in different ways. We've had lots of bookkeepers, accountants, controllers on, but never really did. For some reason, it's just a blind spot for us. So there's so much to talk about. I'm guessing that things are different and changing. If I had to guess outside looking in for the project management space, but maybe a good jumping off point would just be to learn a little bit more about your background and how you came to be being a thought leader in this space.
Yeah. My background is in the agency world. Um, Straight after uni, I knew I wanted to be in the world of advertising and communications. So that's where things started for me. I was in above the line agencies, so working on TV, radio, and press. My first client actually was Stella Artois, which was a beer client for your first client. Pretty cool. But then I focused on digital because I'd always been interested in the web and the world of online and the possibilities. I've been making websites realized that I could work in digital. So I was an account manager at a digital agency and then made the transition into digital project management. So managing projects at that time, I was really focused on Sony, and that was also fun. But I got into the world of project management by accident, really. I was an account manager, focused on brands and relationships. And somehow, by accident, I got into the world of delivery and managing projects, because I was told by the recruiter that they were kind of the same thing, and I believed them. And it's very, very different. So I had a bit of a rude awakening in learning how to be a digital project manager. And so after a few years, decided, hey, well, maybe I think I've learned something by now. I think I can help other people a bit who probably experience the same kind of thing, being thrust into the job without really knowing much about it. So I started the digital project manager, and now it's grown into a big community, which is great. We have an online course as well to help people manage projects in a digital world. We're trying to really write the playbook together for how we deliver projects, how we manage projects, how we deliver value in the world of digital.
Yeah, and it reminds me of my trajectory a little bit because I started as an account manager in an agency here in New York, and then became a degenerate salesperson somehow instead of a project manager. And I think it's probably because my attention to detail I was never super great operational thinker, more of a marketing guy. But that makes a lot of sense. So with that in mind, kind of focusing on project management and starting, at a bigger agency back in the day. How have you seen things change? What were you doing back then? What have you kept? What have you thrown away from that time? I'd love to know.
Yeah, do you know, I think there's a lot that big agencies do well, and strategic thinking, critical thinking, the strategy side of thing is super strong. And the customer research, customer insights, writing really good briefs is something that definitely was really strong for the advertising world. And I think there's a lot that's changed. And I think that our reliance on tools now and the number of tools that we have out there to manage projects more effectively, to know where things are at, to be able to manage projects remotely. These are all things that when I started out, we definitely did not have. It was a lot more paper-based. Now being able to use project management tools to manage projects more effectively, have more control over those projects, knowing who's working on what, is definitely more effective than wandering around an office with a note paper and pen, although that was quite fun. That landscape has changed, and the availability and the tools that we have allow us to manage projects really effectively remotely. And so I think that's what's changing, and that's what will continue to change in the post-COVID era. There's also the emergence of more interesting project insight tools. So as project managers, we can have insights on what's going on in our project. We can forecast things better. We can plan resources more effectively. So as project managers, we can be focused more on delivering value and making sure that we're doing the right thing, and less focused on the administration side of the project. So that's kind of, I guess, the big strategic shift I see is project managers moving from administrators to guardians of value, and it's more of a strategic project delivery role than someone who's ticking the boxes, making sure everyone's doing their job.
Yeah, and would you mind digging into that a little bit more, like what you mean by guardians of value and how that role is changing versus what it was?
Yeah, so I think when I'm talking about guardians of value, I'm talking about making sure the stakeholders or the clients get the best value that they can for the money that they're paying. So I think blind project management, let's call it, is taking a client's brief, taking their budget, taking the timeline, and just doing what they want in the order that they want it to be done. And what we're not being there is strategic about, is this the right thing that we should be doing in the right order? Is this going to is value going to be delivered efficiently? Is it going to be delivered early and often? And I think as project managers, we can shift a project around to set things up so that we are delivering value early and often, so that we're thinking about, okay, what's the most efficient, the low-hanging fruit that we can deliver quickly that's going to be most impactful. And I think thinking about that, not just taking a client brief blindly, but being strategic about how we deliver it. And in that strategic delivery, we're then adding a lot of value because the stakeholders and the clients are seeing a return on their investment earlier. So it's benefits realization and seeing how that investment can deliver value earlier, which I think is good for the relationship overall because they're seeing some results rather than a big, go away, work away on something for a few months and then a big ta-da. Here's what you paid for. And it turns out, oh, maybe it's not quite right, or people are a bit more surprised. So I think it's more of an agile mindset about delivering early and often. It's about collaboration. I'm not talking about necessarily delivering through an agile framework, but I'm talking about a mindset that's agile and that's thinking about delivering value, and that being the reason why a project's worth doing in the first place.
Right. That makes sense. And I guess with that in mind, just for more context, would you mind talking a bit about the demographics of the projects that compose your community? Like, is it X% web design development, Y% something else, and just kind of what that spread tends to look like?
So yeah, I think we've seen the community change. Whereas, definitely early on when we started, it was very much focused around people who are working in digital agencies who are delivering projects for their clients. And I think what we've seen is as the agency world has changed really, and as we've seen clients take on and create their own digital teams internally and try and enable delivery internally within their own delivery teams, we've now got digital project managers in large organizations, in higher education, in all these places where digital agencies used to serve. They've now created their own capabilities in-house. And so now we see digital project managers, not just from agencies, but from these large organizations as well. So it's a real melting pot of agencies, organizations, higher education, nonprofits, government. There's people from all over the place. And yes, there's lots of web-based projects. So there's lots of website design, redesign, but there's product development as well. There's platforms, there's apps that people are creating. There's some marketing campaigns as well, but I think it's generally people are working on platform builds of some kind or another, whether or not that's a website that they're iterating on, or maybe that's a piece of technology that's enabling one of their clients or stakeholders to do something, to manage something more effectively.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And to kind of go back to what you were talking about earlier with the tools and the technology, I think this creates a lot of hand wringing, for different people in different situations. So I guess the question is, like, how much stock do you put in the value of tools? Like, do you recommend people use X for every situation, or how do you think about the software from a high level?
Yeah, I definitely don't have any preferred software that I would recommend above and beyond like anything else. I think you need to look at the kind of projects that you're delivering, the kind of projects that you're working on, your internal processes, what tools you already have, because adding another tool to the mix usually doesn't help. But so what I'm really keen on, and the kind of tool set that I like, is not a one-trick pony. The tool that tries to do everything, I don't really like. I think I'm more excited by tools that try having and introducing a discrete piece of functionality that solves a specific problem that integrate really well with other tools. So it's a tool that integrates well with everything else and allows data to move easily between them. That's what I'm looking for in a tool. So I want the best time tracking tool out there. I want the best resource management tool out there. I want the best project management tool out there, the best timeline creating software out there. And I want them to all integrate and play nicely with one another. Because then I think you get the benefit of the best in breed tools rather than a tool that's just tried adding a piece of timeline functionality to their software, but that's not really what the tool is all about. So yeah, I'm a big fan of best in breed.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this might be kind of meandering. I'm trying to bring it to a succinct question, but I think for us and a lot of our clients, we're on retainer models. We're on the idea of engendering a long-term relationship where you're solving a particular problem over a long period of time. For us, it's helping our clients close new business. For our clients, it could be them helping brands carry out a long-term inbound media campaign, something to that effect. So I guess what I've struggled with is trying to figure out when and where to use project management best practices, given that there's this sort of open-end time horizon and the idea that you want to set kind of an open-ended expectation with a client. So, but at the same time, there's a lot of value to thinking in a project-based way, because then all the loose ends are tied up and everything's done in a clean manner. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I think when working with retainers and kind of ongoing engagement, it creates a lot of flexibility in there, which is great. And I think project management best practices that can help us deliver more value is thinking about how we prioritize that backlog of things that we need to do. How do we decide what to do in what order? How do we look at the benefits or value that we're going to get out of each of these things that we need to do, and make sure we're prioritizing things in the right way? But also we can think about optimizing our throughput. So supposing we have a retainer that allows for 80 hours a month or a certain number of deliverables, how can we streamline the way that we produce those deliverables? What process can we create to optimize that? Or how can we create more throughput with those 80 hours? And it could be that we actually reduce the number of things that are in progress at any one time. Or it could be that we templatize things, or there's different ways that we can approach how we tackle the work. And evaluating even just some simple things as simple as planning things in sprints, creating that backlog of things to do, seeing how much we can actually get done in that timeline, evaluating the throughput, and then working out how we can optimize that with lessons learned. So there's some agile principles that we can begin to introduce that help us become more efficient, help us deliver more value.
Yeah, no, sure. There's lots to dig in there. I guess with that in mind, are there issues that you tend to see over and over again? Or if you could I think Tim Ferriss always has the question: if you could put up a billboard and tell people to stop doing these things, do you have a version of that for project management?
I think the thing that I would tell people to start doing is to start tracking time properly. I think it's one of those things that no one is really excited about tracking time because it feels onerous. It feels a bit big brothery, but it's incredibly effective. If you want to know how your team is spending their time, then they need to track their time. You need to track every minute of the day, because then you can analyze where people do spend time. Do they spend 30% of their time in meetings? I bet you think they don't, but they probably do. So even just understanding the dynamics of what a work week looks like for your team enables you to begin to resource them effectively, enables you to begin to plan out people's time more effectively, work out what your capacity is as an agency, enables you to think about how much work you need to book in order to be profitable. So for me, it all starts going down to the very basic component of what do you have as an agency? Well, you have resources, you have a team that can deliver a certain amount of work. So how do we optimize the amount of work that they can deliver and maximize the amount of value they can produce?
Right, right. That makes sense. And to dig into time tracking a little bit, I think it's one of those things that most agencies know they need to do, but not all of them do it, or not oftentimes the habit doesn't stick. Are there anything? Is there anything that you've seen to be effective in making that stick and actually getting everybody on board with it long term?
Yeah, I think policing it is the only real solution here until it becomes a habit. So I think it takes like 30 days to form a habit or something. And so I'm a big fan of just making a big deal about timesheets. So every day at 5 p.m., go around the office or on Slack, just keep on typing timesheets out until everyone does them. And then make sure that they have done their timesheets. So maybe put it in people's calendars, a reminder, timesheets is 5 p.m., go and do your timesheets. Then check to see if everyone's done it. If they haven't, go back and ask them to do it. It's creating a habit. It's forming a habit in people's minds that this is something that happens. It's part of their workday. It's a ritual like anything else. So helping form a habit, I think, is super, super powerful.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned Slack, so let's talk about Slack.
Yeah.
Where do you think Slack fits into the realm of project management, if at all?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think most project managers in a digital world have Slack open on their computer right now. They're talking with their teams. They're talking with their stakeholders, even in shared channels. So absolutely, I think as a communication tool, Slack, Microsoft Teams, depending on what you're using, but these real-time communication tools can be incredibly effective. I think where they begin to fall apart is where they're used for everything. So I think they're great for communication. I don't think they're so good for managing a project, but I think there are ways to integrate Slack with the project management tools you're using. And so finding a way to tie those together, to create notifications, to point people in the right direction, get them to go to the places where we need them to go, is a great thing to do. So it's a communication tool. It's not a project management tool, but if we can use it to help grease the wheels of communication, I think it can be really useful.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And I know that one thing that you cover a lot is basically managing and controlling like runaway projects to increase profitability. So I'd love to learn some of the best practices, what you're seeing to be effective there.
Yeah. So I think when we think about profitability, there's some different levers that we can pull. And I think it starts with us taking on the right projects to begin with. I think often we can be guilty of taking on projects when we haven't really assessed our ability to deliver that project. We separate new business from delivery. And I think the more that we can integrate delivery and project management into new business, it enables us to create more realistic estimates up front, estimates that are cognizant of our team's ability to deliver and the timeline for that delivery and the cost for that delivery. So I think profitability, increasing profitability starts with the new business sales component. Are we actually selling projects in that we can realistically deliver profitably? So I think that's where it starts. I think it's about estimating things properly, creating realistic timelines and statements of work that are actually robust. And again, I think we can be guilty of being a bit fast and loose, being excited about the sale, which of course is super important, but they're not really taking the time to estimate things and plan things out properly. So there's a new business component, there's a planning component, and then in managing and controlling, again, it comes down to those timesheets. Do we actually have the data to know where we're at on the project? And so often I think we don't have the data. We kind of have a feeling that something's on track or a feeling that it might be behind. But unless we have a timeline that we're tracking against, unless we have timesheet tracking data, how do we know how far through the budget we've actually got? So it comes down to creating data points, creating milestones, to enable us to track how we're doing on the project. And these are just some simple things that we can put in place, which together enable us to deliver more predictably, to enable us to deliver then more profitably, because we've actually allowed the time and the budget to do the project properly.
Right, right. And this is maybe a question I should have asked earlier because it's more foundational, but I'd love to understand a little bit more about project management philosophies. And I'm not an expert on them, but you hear about Scrum, you hear about Agile, all these things. How do you think about project management philosophies? Is it the sort of thing where it's like a team where you're on the Scrum team, or you're an Arsenal person, or are you picking and choosing like a buffet? Like how do you think about what to apply?
Yeah. So when we think about project management methodologies, I think it, I don't think it's so much a team as think of it as a toolkit. So project management methodologies, they're just methods of delivery and ways that we can approach delivering projects. So Scrum provides us with a really prescriptive framework, a process to follow for how to deliver projects. So that's very much follow these steps and you'll be delivering in an agile framework, which is called Scrum. And in contrast to that, you can say, oh, well, actually, that Scrum process doesn't really fit the way that we work and the clients that we're working with. And I think sometimes people can get caught up in the framework or the methodology without trying to work out, is this really a good fit for our clients? Is this really a good fit for our team? Is this really a good fit for the process or the type of work that we're producing? So rather than being prescriptive about a methodology, I definitely think an agile mindset is useful and helpful. And by that agile mindset, I'm talking about being collaborative, about delivering iteratively, about talking to customers and getting their insights, those kind of things, delivering value early and often. That's super important. That's an agile mindset. But I think that's helpful in terms of delivering value. But I think I'm not being prescriptive about a methodology or a framework in order to see that happen. So I don't think Scrum is a very good framework really for agencies delivering projects. And the reason for that is because often the clients or stakeholders we're working with aren't empowered to make decisions. Often they're not available to make decisions. Often they don't have an endless budget or they don't have a flexible timeline. So because of all these reasons, I don't think Scrum's a particularly good fit, generally speaking. So I think we have to work out, okay, well, what does work? Is it more of a waterfall-based approach? But maybe we bring in some of these agile components. So I'm a big fan of hybrid methodologies. I think they work really well for agencies. And I think that's fine. I don't think a prescriptive methodology is necessarily the answer. But if it is for you, then that's great. I think just do what works.
Yeah, and with that in mind, and selfishly asking, is there one of those or a combination of those that works well for retainers and for more of like a reoccurring service model?
Yeah, so I think a Kanban approach, I would say, is good for retainers. In the Kanban approach, we have a backlog similarly to Scrum. We have a backlog of things that people want done. And what we're trying to do is it's like a factory. Kanban originated from Toyota when they're trying to work out how to get more stuff out the factory. And so if you think about a factory, you start off with I don't know how you build a car, but you're adding in different parts to the car as it goes through the factory. So there's different processes. And it's kind of like if you're familiar with Trello. Trello is a Kanban tool. So there's a process that something goes through. And as we go through the process, we're adding different things, or we're putting checks and balances in place. And so this is a really good model for a retainer-based approach when typically we're going through the same process time and time again, and we're doing the same kinds of activities. And what we've got to do is manage the backlog of things that we've got to go through so that we prioritize those things correctly. And then what we're trying to do is maximize our throughput. And the way that we do that is by not having too many things on the go at any one time. And so we want to increase our throughput, get more stuff out the door, and optimize that flow. So think about how we can optimize the process of getting from A, the brief to be the point of delivery. How do we optimize that process? Well, usually it's by reducing the number of things that are being worked on at any one time, and making sure that we're prioritizing things effectively. So Kanban's a great model to use for retainers.
Right. That's really helpful, and I'll need to dig into that. So one thing you mentioned earlier was the evolving role of digital project managers and into project leads. So I guess with that in mind, how important do you think it is that those people be client facing?
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier to be strategic if you are client facing. I think if you're not client facing, it's hard to get under the skin of what a client and a business is all about. So yeah, I think being client facing, I think is the best model when you can. It's not like you have good cop, bad cop. Often, traditionally in agencies, they'll either be the account team, and then they'll pass the project over to the delivery team, and then you can have this good cop bad cop dynamic, which works okay. But I think more straightforward and probably cheaper is just having one person who talks to the client and talks with the team. So yes, it's asking more of that account project person. It is a hybrid role, but they're engaging with the client, they're taking the brief, they're talking to them about the delivery, and then they are making sure the team delivers it. And there's an open, transparent conversation. It's not a game of smoke and mirrors where the account person says, well, let me just go and talk to my project manager, we'll get back to you. And then plays this game of telephone where the project manager says, no, we can't deliver it. They haven't got the budget for that. And then the account person says, the project manager thinks it might be possible. So it just gets rid of all of that noise that happens sometimes in this in the agency client relationship, where account managers, I think, and I used to be an account manager, so I'm guilty of this myself, but we put our best foot forward. We're trying to retain the business. We're trying to get more work. But maybe we're compromising delivery as a result. And then the long-term value or nature of the relationship isn't as strong or as good as it could be.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's definitely asking more of one role, but then that's cleaner and easier and has a lot more going for it than all these different parties involved. So I guess the question is, do you think there's a bigger need overall to make project managers into better salespeople, or to make salespeople into better project managers?
Oh man, yeah, good question. I think maybe. I mean, I'm from a now project management background, but I've also worked in new business. I think project managers who can sell, that would be super powerful, because project managers understand about delivery. And when we're making a sale, we don't just want to sell once. We want to be able to keep selling. And the only way that we can keep selling and to retain a client is if they think they're getting value, is if the relationship is working. So for me, a failure is you sell in a project and you only deliver it once. The cost of sale is too high. So suppose you have project managers who can help and in that new business process, sell in projects effectively, sell in projects that you can actually deliver. That's sticky. That's going to be a relationship that lasts. And so having the ability to plan a project properly, manage and control it effectively, and then help with that business development side of things, I think is incredibly effective.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and definitely no shortage of things to learn to deal with both sides of the coin. So, with that in mind, I would love to learn what you're up to these days at DPM, and how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so I mentioned at the beginning we have a community, and we're really excited about this community we're growing. It's for people who are delivering projects in a digital world. So whether or not you're an account manager or a project manager or a producer, whatever your job title is, it doesn't really matter. It's a community for people who have to go through that process of planning and managing, controlling, initiating projects, new business. It's all in there. So the community is really for people who want to get better, to find people like them who are interested in delivering in a digital world. And so for people as well who have may perhaps new to managing projects, we also offer online training. So you can check it out at thedigitalprojectmanager.com. You'll find there about our membership and our training. that we offer, which is really to help give people the skills they need to manage projects effectively, to plan them properly, to deliver them effectively, so that it enables this sticky relationship with clients, because we're delivering effectively, we're delivering value. So yeah, check it out, thedigitalprojectmanager.com.
Awesome. Ben, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.